All right, welcome back to the program, and let's quickly take our interview right now. The Executive Director at Africa Institute, Dr. Bell, who is joining me at the table. Welcome, Dr. Bell, and how have you been doing?
I've been doing well.
How have you been surviving?
You know, I'm part of the system, I'm part of the country, so of course we've all had the impact of COVID-19, but it's great to be back here as usual, you know, but we are coping.
We're coping. That's one word in it. We are coping, we are managing. Anyway, this poll that I saw, this poll that you released, quite interesting, from Africa Polling Institute, quite interesting when I saw it. Does Nigeria love Nigerians? And I asked myself, I don't think I've seen a poll like this. So fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
What does it say? Why? What was the motive behind doing this kind of poll at this time?
Good question, Nancy. You know, I think we should start by asking ourselves that sometimes you hear about things happening in the society, you hear about things happening in the country, maybe crime, maybe domestic violence, all sorts of issues. And certain questions come to mind. First, even when you hear about some of the killings going on in parts of the country, you ask yourself, are these killings done by Nigerians? Or are there people coming from elsewhere to perpetuate these crimes? But sometimes you have to be, you know, frank with yourself and tell yourself that, you know, these things are happening in Nigeria. So then it raises another question, that what then is happening to the social contracts? And the social contract talks about the responsibility and the obligations of government to the citizenry and the responsibility of citizenry to the government. So this is part of, if you will, Africa Polling Institute's contribution to interrogating the social contract. And I should say that this is the first part of a two-part survey. So the first part is, does Nigeria love Nigerians? And the second part is, do Nigerians love Nigeria?
Oh, so
because
I preempted you when I even in my
precisely.
Do you love Nigeria? And I didn't
precisely, yes. So that's the second part of the survey. What would you do for the country? How far would you go for the country? How loyal and committed would you be to the country? So that's the second part, and we need to put a balance here. So it's not just about does Nigeria. There's the part that the government owes to the citizenry. There's also the part that and because our sense, if you look through the literature, is that part of the reason for sort of a broken contract is that people have become disconnected or detached from the government, and they see government as being on their own, and while we are on our own. And that's what's leading to some of the rift or the civil unrest we're getting in various parts of the country.
You know, when I also saw this, what came to my mind is what JFK of the US said at the time, that has become a famous quote. Don't ask what the country will do for you,
or what you do
but
for the country.
What you do for the country. So you are asking right here what the country is doing for us.
That's right.
As citizens. The question also is, does Nigeria love Nigerians? Is it Nigeria as an entity? Or perhaps when I looked at this, I said, does Nigeria love me as Nancy? Perhaps the motherland loves me. The question now will be, the leaders piloting Nigeria, do they love me? That's where the question of this social contract come from. Is there even a social contract in the first place?
So good point. And that's why, you know, this study is really interesting. And why it's interesting, because we had the opportunity to ask a pointed question to Nigerians. Do you believe Nigeria loves you as a citizen? But then we also had the opportunity to pick up certain indicators and use those indicators to, you know, interrogate this question further. So indicators sort of, are you proud of being Nigerians? How well do you trust the Nigerian state? If you encounter problems abroad, do you think the Nigerian government will come to your aid? You know, if you fall terminally ill, or how well do you think we care for those who are terminally ill? I mean, you drive around town sometimes, you see some people now making business out of people who are really ill. I mean, if there was a system where those people, once you have those kind of ailments or diseases that we know the state knows you cannot pay for yourself, there will be provision. Instead of certain people making off or using them for business. So we also asked other questions like, how do we care for the elderly? How much care do we give the elderly in this country? And of course, people living with disabilities. Does the country provide equal opportunity for people living with disabilities? So there were about 10 indicators that we used to test this. Thereafter, we asked Nigerians the key questions. Then what are the areas of policy focus that they want government to focus attention on?
Now let's go to those details. The first one I'm seeing here, the chart. Are you proud to be Nigerian?
I mean, it speaks for itself.
It's a simple question,
yes,
but it's not.
It is really.
Am I proud to be a Nigerian?
And, you know, I can ask you this question, and we ask Nigerians this question. Interestingly, 91%, at least 9 out of every 10 Nigerian is proud to be a Nigerian. You know, this finding cuts across various social demography, gender, age, literacy level, even geopolitical zones. Nigerians are proud of being Nigerians. But then it moves to when you ask them, how much do you trust the Nigerian state? And when we ask that question, at least 67% have very little or no trust whatsoever with the Nigerian state. We only had about 33% who said they had some or a lot of trust in the Nigerian state. So it tells you a lot. On one hand, they are proud of being Nigerians. But on the other hand, how much do you trust the Nigerian state? Very little. And we followed that up by an interesting question by saying, okay, listen, what have you benefited by being Nigerian in the last 5 years? To our amazement, 75% of Nigerians say they've benefited absolutely nothing. Those were their terms. So, I mean, these are opinions of the people, and by the time we'll go into other areas, how we treat the elderly, how we treat we can definitely dig in a bit more.
Let me still talk about how proud are you? Are you proud to be a Nigerian? Because that's quite interesting. Like I said earlier, it could be simple, but not a simple question also for people to answer, because they may answer as according to how they feel. I was having a conversation yesterday with someone. I went to get something, and when I wanted to pay, of course, I wanted to do a bank transfer. The guy was just like, Nnaji, just give me more than what's, I was like, oh, really? He said, the young guy is about, let's say about 20, between the ages of 26 and 29. Let me put it that way. And the guy told me when we were having the conversation, he said, you know what, in my next life, if there's a next life, I don't want to be a Nigerian. That's what the guy told me. So I said, why? He said, I don't want to be a Nigerian because I haven't gained anything. I said, why would you feel that way? So I said, okay, which country would you like to come from if there's a next life? He said, I would like to come from a country whereby from 18, with the kind of resources we have, because I know there are countries that pay their citizens proceeds from the resources they have.
That's right.
And there was no how I could convince the young man yesterday. So how does that pertain, because it's part of...
Yeah, precisely. Perhaps that young man is one of the 9% who, said they're not proud with the country. And of course, you remember sometime, I think it was in February or March, we had the conversation of the Canada rush.
Yes.
Why Nigerians traveling to Canada, and that raised a whole lot of question about if you had the opportunity to leave this country, would you? And, the number of people who said, no, if I had the opportunity at the slightest request, I would take that opportunity to leave. But then again, it's about thinking about the country. I think the average Nigerian believes in this country. But what we've seen over time is that failed promises, issues about governance have sort of dampened provided this sort of apathy, whereby when you're talking about Nigeria now, yes, people are proud, but then there are issues of trust, For example, we asked the question, do you think your life matters to the Nigerian government? Because we need to ask these sort of questions. At least 60% say they either do not think their life matters at all, from 45%, or 15% who say they are unsure. Only about 4 in 10, only 40% say they believe that their life, matters to the government. Then followed by another question. Do you think your opinion counts in decision making? Because these are the issues. That's key. 80% say they don't think their opinions count or their opinion matters to issues in decision making. Only 20% believe that their opinions count. So, and this speak a lot. For governance to be effective, it has to be participatory. You know, for Nigerians need to have that sense of belonging to say, oh, I know that I'm part of this. You know, there is that you go to other countries, you hear about that dream. The dream is about, I know that this country means well for me. I know the country will do everything to protect me, and in return, I will do everything to stand for the country, even if it means giving my life for the country.
Let's talk about some of the specifics now. I'm interested in this. As a Nigerian, do you think the government cares enough for the elderly in the society? Let's start from there.
Interestingly, you know, when we did run the analysis for this, so 72% of Nigerians say they do not believe the government cares enough for the elderly in the society. But I was more specific to see what the elderly themselves, because we had this by various social demographic classification. 84% of the elderly feel that the country does not care for them. So that speaks a lot. You know, the people who serve probably in the civil service have finished serving meritoriously for how many years and retire. It comes to issue of payment of pensions or gratuities, it becomes a long journey. It becomes a long thing, as they will say. You understand? So people have served in military or served in the forces, they come back, it's time to get their pay, it becomes an issue. Some people in the line of service, their family member have passed on. But okay, let them access the pension or access the benefits of those family members. It becomes an issue. So you begin to ask yourself, are we treating because there's a statement that says we are as strong as our weakest link. How do we treat elderly? Then you talk about the people living with disabilities. You know, there was some picture going around on social media recently about you know, someone on wheelchair who was trying to access a story building, and I think it's a public institution, and there was no adequate provision for, you know, that person to be able to access the building. So again, it talks about how do we treat those with disabilities? Are we providing enough opportunities for the blind, for the deaf, for the visually impaired, for, you know, and how we treat these people speaks a lot about what happens to the country ultimately and how the world perceives who we are as a people.
From the survey, I'm seeing that concerning how the country provides equal opportunities for people living with disability, I see that 57% say no, that the country doesn't provide equal opportunities.
That's right.
18% think that the country does. 25% are saying not sure.
They're not sure. So you see that, and it gives you a grim picture of the fact that we ourselves as Nigerians, we know that people living with disability deserve more than we are giving them. I mean, that they are physically disabled does not mean they are mentally disabled. Many of these guys would even do better than, you know, people who are able, so to speak, if given the opportunity. And it's about how does the system provide such a level playing field such that you know you are proud of being Nigerian, whether you are physically disabled, whether you are not able, you know that the country has your back. There's another interesting question that was asked about, okay, which policy of government has benefited you the most? 73% of Nigerians said no policy.
73% of Nigerians says no policy.
And amongst those who now said some, about 7% say security, about 5% or so said empowerment. And this then dips us to some of these areas that they want government to focus their attention on. Because
in your own poll too, you also talked about what policies should be reinforced to add value to the lives of Nigerians.
Yes.
Talk to me about some of those policies that Nigerians talked about.
Okay, so let's look at the top 5, you know, because I love to, you know, look at the top 5. The first is the employment policies. We cannot, you know, say so much about the state of unemployment in the country. Of course, MBS stats 27.1% at the moment. You if you also add the underemployed 28.2%, so you're having almost 50, what?
55.
Percent thereabout of your population unemployed. That's not good enough. Sometimes we say that it's not the job of government to create jobs. It's the job of government to create an enabling environment and allow the private sector create jobs. Yes, I hear that, but government still has a role to play to ensure that most of its citizens have what they are doing. Because the reason why we're having an increase in crime, youth unemployment, for example, is 34.6. So if you add that to youth underemployment, people who maybe are graduates are selling recharge card, or graduates are riding tricycles just to make a living because they can't go into crime, you see that proportion is a lot more than what should be. But let's give a balance to this. The second part of what Nigerians want government to focus on is security. Without security, investments can't come. A lot more needs to be, I've said this on your show time without number. A lot more needs to happen on security. Then we'll talk about good governance, we'll talk about corruption, before we'll talk about empowerment. In fairness to the government, there've been some, traction in the area of empowerment. So the homegrown school feeding,
the conditional cash transfer,
the empower. But can it be scaled? Because this intervention still seems like a drop in the ocean. It still seems like a drop in the ocean. Can we, and government has done their bit, but can they scale it up such that many more Nigerians will be able to access these benefits that are, coming out from government? Because the truth of the matter is, let's not forget that we're still the poverty capital of the world, and you have over how many percent of your population really poor. And we should focus our attention to that empowerment for the poor, bringing about pro-poor policies that can, really affect the poor at the grassroots.
Do you believe Nigeria loves you as a citizen? It's 50-50.
Yes, it's really interesting. By the time we run those numbers, it's 50-50. But to get a deeper sense of that, you would have to peep closely to look at the demography. So, for example, I just saw your people put that up now. For example, when you look at the age demography, you see that those who are above the ages, those who are 60 plus, say they are not, fall in that category of 66% who are not happy or who do not believe the country loves them. And I tell you why. Because this has been a constant concern of mine to wonder why are the elderly ones saying that they are not happy or they don't believe the country loves them? It's because they've seen, would we say, a better Nigeria?
Because I was coming to that why should
they've
complain?
Seen a more peaceful Nigeria.
Because they saw a better Nigeria.
They've seen a Nigeria where
they went to school,
peaceful coexistence,
free,
religious peaceful coexistence, tribal peaceful coexistence. And, when they look at what they've been through in the past and they compare and contrast with what is happening today, they say, wow, something has gone wrong somewhere.
So the old Nigeria is better than the new Nigeria?
That is not to say that the old Nigeria is better than that is to say that in their own perception, what they've seen in the past is better than what they've seen today. But in their days, they didn't have the internet. We have the internet today. So we can do those analysis to see where, but by and large, you will also see, when you look at the demography there, you see something also very interesting. The less educated feel that the country loves them than the more educated. Those ones in the tertiary institutions or those who have their degrees and above feel that the country does not love them enough. But those who are less educated feel that the country, love them. Then you see the northern and southern divide. Of course, 57% of the northern half of the country feel that the country loves them, compared to 43% of the southern half of the country that feel that the country loves them. So really, really interesting stats here.
How important is this survey, especially now that Nigeria is just a few weeks away to 60th independence? you know, because I think these are some of the things that government should begin, a responsive government should begin to interrogate and find out how Nigerians are really feeling as we will be celebrating 60 years of independence.
That's right. I mean, you know, someone said to me yesterday, this poll or this survey couldn't have come at a better time. Because now we are heading 60, we should begin to sit down and ask ourselves critical questions. We should begin to say, religion aside, tribe aside, politics aside, let's sit down and ask, is governance working for the common good of the country, especially the poor? Is governance working for the country? You know, you go around, you see people who are ill. Some of those illnesses, you can't even look at them. And you expect that these people should be in the hospital. They can't care for themselves. There should be some provision that they are being cared for. You see some of the elderly, you ask yourself this question. You see the state of some people living with disabilities. You ask yourself, what is happening? Does the country love its citizens? And that's why we conduct a study of this nature. But as I said, this is the first leg. There is still the second leg.
Do you love Nigeria?
Would you pay your tax? Would you do things to support and promote the unity, the peaceful coexistence of the nation? How far would you go? And those are, still other areas to come as we move
I
forward
asked this question earlier, and I don't know if you've sufficiently answered it in terms of if there's really a social contract. Because you are interrogating the social contract that government has with Nigerians. Because if you take a look at it, really, most Nigerians are providing, now there's electricity tariff increase, fuel hikes. People are not taking it lightly. Food prices are on the increase and predicted it will still increase. Let me not just be an angel of doom today. Food prices will still go up because we have inflation in double digits. So is that existence of social contract? Because you take a look at it, I may not be having light even up to 6 hours a day. I have to power my generator. The road to my house, there are potholes. Nobody is filling it up. Yet they are breathing on me. I'm a taxpayer. We've seen what FIRS, I'll come to that in a bit because I think FIRS has clarified what the federal government talked about, self-certification. So things like that. I open a business, all sorts of people are coming on Monile in Lagos. So you take a look at that. Where is the social is there even a social contract?
As long as there's a state, there's a social contract.
Or there should be a social contract?
No, as long as a state exists. We won't talk about social contracts if there's no state. The theory, in literature, the theory of social contract presupposes that as long as there's a state in existence, there is an unwritten social contract. And that unwritten social contract comes with some unwritten obligations from both sides. So, for example, government should be responsible for providing security for lives and property. Government should be responsible for providing the welfare of the people. Government should be responsible for putting out policies that will make life better for the people. That's on the public side. They should pay their tax. They should be loyal to the state. They should do what they can to support the state. They should support the state's programs and state's activities. But then the question, just as you've raised, is, are citizens involved in decision making? And we ask that question. Are citizens involved? So if 80% of your population is either unsure or they're saying, no, we know our voice do not count. For example, before the tariff was increased, was there a survey conducted with Nigerians to find out what they would think if the electricity tariff was increased? Was before the PMS price was increased, was there a survey or a national poll to find out what, because sometimes it'd be useful to say, okay, the current arrangement is not working. We may consider some increase in. What do you think would be a fair increase? Because we often feel that the ordinary man has no say or has no voice. No, the voice of the ordinary man is gold. And let's not forget, it is the citizens that put the government in power.
Okay. All right. Just finally, just in about 30 seconds,
Okay.
People, do you believe your life matters to the Nigerian government? How much trust do you have in the Nigerian state? Do Nigerians believe that?
The data shows that 60% at least do not believe that their life matters. 45% clearly say that they know their life do not matter. 15% say they are unsure as to whether or not. Only 4% or 40% of that population, feel that their lives matter. And this, in itself, speaks a lot about what government should be doing to assuage the opinions or the feelings of Nigerians. Just as we heard from, the interviews from the market, there's a lot that needs to be done to lessen the burden. Of course, that COVID-19 had come with so much pain of its own. And amidst COVID-19, there should be certain considerations that government should have for the citizens and need to look into.
All right, just before we go, the FIRS on its Twitter handle concerning the news about self-certification, I've got to say this before we go. The FIRS is saying that it would like to refer the esteemed taxpayer and general public to the public notice. This is required for due diligence in line with the requirements of income tax. The FIRS is saying that the self-certification forms are to be administered by financial institutions to enable account holders clearly document their respective jurisdictions of tax residents, relevant financial information, and other stakeholders. So that's it on the screen from the FIRS concerning the self-certification. Dr. Ihua, thank you for joining us
Always
today.
My pleasure. I will come back for the second leg.
Do you love Nigeria?
Yes, do Nigerians love Nigeria?
All right, that's the much you can take on today's edition and this week. So it's a wrap. Thank you all for investing your time this week and today. Join us on all our social media platforms. Go now so that you can win the 3-in-1 cash protection against COVID-19. I am Nnaji. Continue to protect yourselves and keep safe. I'll see you all Monday morning. Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.